You know, it sounds like it should be in the top 10 choices is a Palestinian person, which does not appear on this peace board. And that's how we know that Donald Trump's alleged ceasefire, which the state of Israel has violated countless times, by the way, is just a facade. And
you're going to let the aggressors in this war onto the peace board? I don't think so.
Who are the aggressors in this war?
Hamas, the Palestinians, Hamas that invaded Israel, that raped, murdered, kidnapped, and tortured the Israelis. That
are you
took
claiming
hostages,
right now that the state of Israel has never committed rape, torture, or murder against innocent Palestinians?
In today's video, Cameron Kasky shuts down Scott Jennings on Newsnight with Abby Phillip as a heated CNN debate erupts over Donald Trump's foreign policy instincts, his fixation on the Nobel Peace Prize, and the bizarre push to acquire Greenland. As Scott Jennings attempts to defend Trump's rhetoric as strategic or misunderstood, Cameron Kasky cuts through the noise with sharp challenges about ego-driven diplomacy, strained alliances, and the real risk to US credibility on the global stage. The exchange exposes how personal ambition, mixed messaging, and reckless threats toward allies can undermine serious geopolitics in an increasingly unstable world. So let's dive in and watch how Cameron Kasky shuts down Scott Jennings on Newsnight with Abby Phillip.
And in a new phone interview with NBC, the president again refused to take U.S. military intervention off the table as a means to get his way. Joining us now in our fifth seat, Suzanne Nossel, a senior fellow at the Chicago Council on Global Affairs. And friends, Cameron, let me just start with you. I mean, who among us hasn't lost a peace prize and demanded an island?
Well, Trump is being very transparent about what he wants here, and he did the same in Venezuela. In Venezuela, he said this was about oil. And with Greenland, he's saying this is a personal grievance for which I am threatening military action. And he's basically playing risk because people hurt his feelings, or people ostensibly hurt his feelings. So I am appreciative that the president is being transparent about this. I would love it if he was more transparent about the human sex trafficking network that he was a part of, but you can't win them all.
Cameron's grateful that the president is being transparent about the Nobel Peace Prize and his desires for Greenland. Scott, what do you think about that?
You going to let that sit? Are we going to claim here on CNN that the president is part of a global sex trafficking ring?
We're going to talk about the Epstein file. Scott, I will do the fact-checking as we go along here. Repeat what you said about the global sex trafficking ring.
That Donald Trump was provably very involved with it.
Okay, we'll get to that later. I mean, Donald Trump has never been charged with any crimes in relation to Jeffrey Epstein. But
let's be adults here.
We'll talk about Epstein
files. Let's be serious.
Later. Satisfied? Now answer the question about Greenland. Do you think the president's desire now for Greenland in his text to the Norwegian prime minister reveals perhaps something about Donald Trump?
Well, it is true that the government of Norway doesn't award the Nobel Peace Prize. That's true. It's also true that he would very much like to get one. It's also true that he probably deserves one. So all of those things are true. I also think that he very much wants Greenland for national security reasons. He has stated this time and again. He's worried about Russia. He's worried about China. He's worried about protecting this island. It is a vital area. They have critical minerals. We already have a military base there. We're already obligated to protect it anyway. He doesn't believe that Denmark can adequately protect it. So he's got an idea that it would be better under U.S. control. So did Harry S. Truman. So did Secretary of State William Seward. This has been an island that has been recognized by American presidents and diplomats for 150 years that it would be a good idea for us to control. We bought stuff from Denmark before, the Virgin Islands, so it's not unusual for us to engage in these kinds of transactions. Whether this text exchange helps him get to a deal to buy it, I don't know. I want him to be able to buy it. I think the best way to get it is to buy it.
Lee, why bring up Greenland?
Cameron Kasky's position lines up with a broader reality often ignored on cable news discussions today. Threatening allies or floating military force over territory like Greenland isn't normal diplomacy. It undermines alliances the United States depends on globally. Denmark is a NATO ally, and collective defense relies on trust, credibility, and restraint, not coercion. When American leaders publicly pressure allies, it hands propaganda wins to Russia and China, while weakening democratic norms and long-standing expectations of allied cooperation internationally. There's also an international law problem backing Cameron Kasky's skepticism about this entire approach. Post-World War II norms explicitly reject acquiring territory through threats or pressure, even when strategic interests are involved. Greenland already hosts a US military base through negotiated agreement, proving security cooperation does not require ownership. Turning security concerns into personal leverage weakens America's credibility when condemning land grabs elsewhere globally. It also confuses allies about intentions and destabilizes rules the United States once championed after decades of diplomatic leadership. The Nobel Peace Prize angle matters because it reveals incentives rather than serious policy substance. The prize is awarded by an independent Norwegian committee and historically rewards de-escalation, diplomacy, and restraint, not coercive rhetoric. History shows leaders fixated on personal legacy often blur national interest with ego. Cameron Kasky's critique resonates because many Americans distrust foreign policy driven by grievance and image management. They prefer stability, alliances, predictable leadership, and decisions grounded in law rather than impulsive personal ambition abroad for long-term security worldwide.
Then, I mean, why bring up the Nobel Peace Prize? If it's about this well-thought-out, Truman-esque process, as Scott is suggesting, to get the island, why say, and I was snubbed for the Nobel Peace Prize?
First of all, Donald Trump is being transparent about what he wants. He wants a Nobel Peace Prize because he wants what he wants when he wants it. He's being a brat. And as a mother, I'm telling you, this is a boy that's never been told no. And this doesn't belong to you. To Scott, I would say Greenland's not for sale. That's nice that America wants to buy it. They have said, we're not for sale. We do not want to be bought. The people in Denmark are saying, we're not selling it. So I don't know why we keep talking about it like America's the biggest boy in the room and we have the most money and we'll come in here and take it. And I would also say, if it is for sale, where are they getting the $700 billion they're suggesting they're buying it from? Because that would come from the American taxpayer. And we want things like healthcare and education and new roads and bridges and those kind of things. And we're going to spend, what, $700 billion to buy an island that isn't for sale? I think it's ludicrous. I think we're acting like the biggest brat. We look terrible on the world stage. And if you're part of NATO and then you start acting like you're not going to back up NATO, you're going to actually take things from them, then it makes us look terrible. And it's just poor leadership.
Talk about the world stage, Suzanne.
Yeah, look, nobody is in disagreement that Greenland is a strategic island, that we have interests there, that the protection of U.S. and European national security is implicated in Greenland. But we have all the access we need. I mean, the reason we did a deal with Denmark to put bases there, to put U.S. troops there, is because they recognize that. And they're willing to expand that deal, to renegotiate it, to give the U.S. the rights that it may need to implement if Trump wants to and is able to, a version of the Iron Dome that would protect the United States and North America. So the idea that we have to have complete control, he's admitted it's a psychological need that he has, not a need that is driven by U.S. national interest. He said that to a New York Times reporter. And so the cost that this is exacting, extorting the Europeans, threatening to impose these tariffs that now have Europe on edge, looking at a complete withdrawal and breakdown of the NATO alliance, the most successful alliance in world history that has lasted for, now nearly 80 years. That is an appalling cost to price to pay for the American people for a kind of flight of fancy that's ego-driven. He admits that. I think it's great he's owned up to it because we can then size him up. But the Nobel Peace Prize is not a participation trophy. This is not, something that you're entitled to because you stomp your feet.
And just one last thing on the Nobel Prize. This is what he told NBC today. Of course, even after Norway told him they're not the ones who pick it. Norway totally controls it despite what they say, he told NBC News. They like to say they have nothing to do with it, but they have everything to do with it, the president added. And then he goes on to say, I don't care about the Nobel Prize. It's a pretty strange way of saying you don't care.
John, I would agree with the president. He, quite frankly, doesn't care about the Nobel Peace Prize.
What evidence do you have? Is there any evidence you have?
I do.
I do. Wait a second.
Wait a second. We all were quiet when everyone was talking. If he did care so much about it, he would have stopped on this 8 times victory that he's had in playing in global affairs and stopping conflicts around the world. I know some people at this table may not agree, but the president has, in fact, utilized his place as a leader of the free world to stop conflicts around the world. And I would disagree with the point you made earlier. We just heard 2 people at this table refer to the president as a brat and conflated, which hundreds of thousands of people from Venezuela who call America home now cheered on and agreed with. That's what we just conflated what the president is doing, which I agree with Scott, is a national security, as you said yourself.
This is how unusual the premise really is. Modern international relations don't work on impulse buying, especially when self-determination is a core principle under international law. Greenland's population has repeatedly affirmed it is not for sale, and Denmark's sovereignty over it is recognized by NATO and the UN. Treating allied territory as a transaction signals instability, not strength, and historically that kind of posture has weakened alliances rather than secured long-term American interests for future global cooperation. Supporters frame the idea as strategic realism, but the facts undercut that claim. The US already maintains critical military infrastructure in Greenland through long-standing agreements, expanded as recently as the past decade. Defense experts consistently note that access, not ownership, is what matters for missile defense and Arctic security. Escalating rhetoric instead risked pushing European partners toward hedging strategies that benefit China and Russia. History shows alliances fracture faster when coercion replaces diplomacy, especially among democratic partners who expect predictable leadership from Washington. Tim Parrish's dismissal of ego ignores a pattern voters recognize. Political science research shows leaders driven by personal legacy often take outsized risks that outlast their terms. The Nobel fixation matters because it reframes diplomacy as validation, not responsibility. Lee McGowan and Suzanne Nossel's position resonates because Americans are wary of foreign policy theatrics that cost money, credibility, and trust. National security works best when it's boring, steady, and rooted in cooperation, rather than impulsive gestures driven by grievance or vanity on world stage.
No one's actually objecting to that. I mean, I think everyone's saying,
Well, I
look,
think
if
there's
there
two
can
people
be
at
a
this table who are absolutely
negotiation,
neglecting
if there can be a give and take, if we can come to terms with the Danes and we need greater access, so be it. And the Europeans
That would be
keep
diplomacy,
repeating
which I
that.
think I would be totally for. What we're doing here now is not diplomacy.
Actually, that
it's
was
biggest guy in the room will take what he wants when he wants, and that seems to be a Donald Trump
Can
thing.
I, because Cameron brought it up, this peace board for Gaza, is Vladimir Putin the right guy for that board, Scott?
Well, we've have to be in the United Nations with them, and we have to be on the United Nations Security Council with them, which I don't love that they get vetoes over us in the United Nations Security Council. So I guess we have to deal with them. Do I love it? No, but they're already part of the UN. They're
Would
already
he
part
be
of the
one
UN
of your
Security
top 5 choices?
Council. Top 5 choices? No.
10. 20.
You know what sounds like it should be in the top 10 choices is a Palestinian person, which does not appear on this peace board. And that's how we know that Donald Trump's alleged ceasefire, which the state of Israel has violated countless times, by the way, is just a facade. And
You're going to let the aggressors in this war onto the peace board? I don't think so.
Who are the aggressors in this war?
Hamas, the Palestinians, Hamas that invaded Israel, that raped, murdered, kidnapped, and tortured the Israelis. That
Are you
took
claiming right
hostages,
now that the state of Israel has never committed rape, torture, or murder against innocent Palestinians? Can you make that
claim? The entire reason we had this war is because of October the 7th. So no, I don't think they should be invited to be on the peace board until they, demilitarize and do the rest of the things they're supposed to do.
I don't know if they're exactly on this peace board, but there is a group of Palestinian leaders, technocrats who've been named to assume some role to bring forward the leadership and the implementation of the peace agreement in Gaza. I'm not saying we should all be sanguine about how that's going to go. I don't know exactly where it stands, but there is a group of individuals who've been named. So I think that's a positive step.
The question is
Go ahead.
The question is if they're named, can they pay the $1 billion entrance fee to be in the club? Because that's the price.
Well, I don't think the Palestinians are being asked to pay that, but the pay
That's
to play
the pay to play for this board.
$1 billion to join. All right.
I side with Cameron Kasky here because history doesn't back up the idea that strong-arming allies produces stability. Greenland already hosts U.S. military assets under existing defense agreements, and experts at the Pentagon have repeatedly said access matters more than ownership. When tariffs or threats enter the conversation, trust erodes fast, especially inside NATO. That's not theory. Trade disputes during the Trump years measurably reduced cooperation on security intelligence, which is exactly what adversaries like Russia and China hope to see happen globally. On Gaza, the peace board argument falls apart under basic conflict resolution standards. Every major successful peace process from Northern Ireland to Colombia included representation from the affected population, not just outside power brokers, excluding Palestinian voices while elevating figures like Vladimir Putin undermines legitimacy from the start. International law scholars consistently warn that ceasefires imposed without local buy-in collapse quickly, which explains why repeated truces fail and violence resumes despite lofty diplomatic announcements. History shows this pattern again and again across regions worldwide. Scott Jennings frames these issues as realism, but realism without restraint becomes recklessness. Data from the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute shows militarized posturing increases conflict risk, not deterrence, when allies are targeted. Cameron Kasky's position aligns with public sentiment too. Recent polling shows Americans prefer diplomacy over coercion by wide margins. That's not weakness. It's lessons learned from decades of costly miscalculations where ego-driven policy left taxpayers poorer and global trust badly damaged and destabilized alliances meant to prevent future wars entirely worldwide. Pause. Are you getting tired of getting half the story from biased news sources? One outlet says one thing and another says the complete opposite. How are you supposed to know what's actually true? That's where ground news comes in. It lets you compare how different media outlets, left, right, and center are covering the same story. So you can see the full picture instead of just the echo chamber. And here's the best part. Click the link in the description and get 40% off the Vantage tier, which gives you even deeper insights into media bias and political trends. Stay informed, think for yourself, and check out Ground News in the description down below.